Did you get the notification we're recording? All right, awesome. Let's do it. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited that we have an amazing guest speaker tonight. It is my former colleague, former teacher turned mom, now turned advocate. So we're going to hear from a parent's perspective tonight. So we've up until this point in the course, we've heard from AAC evaluators and what happens when they go out to a school to evaluate a child that needs an AAC device of some sort. We've learned about a lot of different devices. We're going to start getting into specific communication and language disorders, but tonight we're going to hear from her parent perspective about her child, Mac, and how he communicates, how he used to communicate, how he communicates currently, and everything in between. So please welcome Colleen Zarek. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, guys.
We are going to be talking tonight about Mac, and I have a lot of videos. I love to share videos in my class. We're going to meet Mac. We're going to hear all about him. But for Colleen, I'm going to launch our first poll just so you can see who's in the meeting tonight, see who has experience in what kind of settings. Let me launch my first poll. Who's here? Are you a gen ed teacher, a sped teacher, not currently teaching, or other? And if you're other, drop it in the chat and tell us what you are. Okay. Can you see those results, Call?
I can.
Okay. So no sped teachers yet. Got some gen ed teachers, no current teachers. And who's my other? Let's see what the chat says. Oh, we have a paraprofessional. Hi, Mila. Okay. Structured teaching program para. Awesome. All right. And then
these elementary teachers.
Oh, I should have added that. I know I have secondary teachers.
Okay.
In my course. Drop it in the chat if you are a current teacher, what grades you teach. Forgot about that one. I should have done that one. Or you can come off mute if that's easier too. Abigail 6 to 8, Tracy's middle school, Brandon 6 to 12, Brianna sped para. So yeah.
Okay.
Got a
Awesome.
good range. And then my next poll question, since we are going to be talking about Mac tonight, my next poll question is going to have to do with experience working with students with autism. So you can see that. So next poll, let me launch it. Okay. So this is multiple choice. Check the ones that apply to you. I currently teach students with autism. I do not currently teach students with autism. I have taught students with autism in the past, or I have never taught students with autism. Okay. There you go, Call.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right, so we got some with autism, some in the past, some nevers.
So all the ones who are teaching with autism are in a gen ed classroom.
Yeah, I don't have any sped teachers yet.
Okay, that's awesome.
All right, so I thought it'd be fun to start off with probably the most current video I have of Mac, which is all done pool.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Okay, let's do it. Let me just stop my share for a second. Make sure I have it. All right, so here is my first video of Mac.
Madam Pool? Yes, Pool? Yes, Pool?
Ai, sai tomorrow.
I say tomorrow. Do you want to go to the pool?
No. Inside.
Inside.
Tay tay tomorrow.
Tayo sa tomorrow. No po?
Don't pull.
Oh, that po. No po?
Amazing. All right, Carl. So talk about Mac.
Yeah.
Give us a little history and then tell us about his communication.
Okay. Oh gosh, this goes back far. So a little bit about me is I am a former elementary teacher. I taught basically 3rd through 5th grade for 8 years, then had my first baby and became a stay-at-home mom. So I have an 11-year-old daughter, and then I also have a 7-year-old son, Mac. Around 12 months is when I started noticing some delays with Mac. He had a few words, mama, dada, few things, like very few, but it was more like occupational therapy type things I was noticing he wasn't doing. He was a little delayed in walking and in sitting and all of that stuff. So I brought him, or I'm sorry, I went through EI for the first few months and had him evaluated, and he qualified for speech, OT, PT, and developmental therapy. That lasted a few months. I think everybody's experience with the EI is different. You just, it all comes down, as I believe with teachers, it doesn't matter the building you're in or the neighborhood, it just comes down to the person. We just didn't have the greatest luck with therapy, with therapists through EI. And at that point, Mac had only had a few words. So we ended up going private for OT, PT, and speech to a local company right by us, probably within like 3 or 4 months. And at that time, Mac pretty much lost all of his words. It wasn't like this sudden onset. It just slowly, I guess I didn't even really notice it because he never was like really clearly speaking. It was more just like babbling. So from about 15 months on, we did a lot of therapy with OT, PT, and speech. We were in clinic like 3 days a week. I sat in every therapy with them. And they were just working on mimicking letter sounds, any sound that he could mimic. And he couldn't put the sounds together. He was diagnosed with apraxia really quickly, which we kind of assumed from the beginning, just because we were seeing signs of it. I also was familiar with it, so I was looking for it. We immediately kind of input PECs into his world in a very modified version where we had a very simple PECs board or book, and it was basically pictures, real life pictures, not generalized pictures of things that motivated him. So foods that motivated him, places he liked to go, toys. We just took pictures of them and created a small little book. We learned really quickly the only way to get Mac to work was if there was a motivator. So that PECs board book went with us to all therapies. It would be a first this and then that. He picked up on the PECs like so quickly. I, as a mom, found it really hard to do, I guess, to keep it organized. It kept being like, I didn't see an end in sight where I'm like, well, I could add this picture, but I could add this picture, but I could add this picture. And I was like, I think I could have 2,000 pictures in this book. And so I just started getting a little bit overwhelmed by it. So we continued on with it. We started labeling things around the house too, like the pantry door, the bathroom door, working on him taking it off of the wall and giving it to me, not requiring him to verbally say it, but just working on using the picture. Again, it was like a really modified version. If a speech therapist came and saw how we did it, they would be like, oh God, this is not the research behind it. But we were in like fight or flight functioning mode. And it worked, like he would pick pictures of stores that he wanted to go to, and it would be like a picture of Target. And so we would honor it and we would go and do as much follow-up as we could and made big deals when he got it. And then it was kind of like this elephant in the room from like 15 months till he was diagnosed right before 2 of there being a diagnosis of autism. Nobody would say it. I was very clear this was kind of what was going on. Nobody there was qualified to diagnose it. Luckily, I was able to get on a waiting list for a developmental pediatrician. 5 years ago when he was diagnosed, it was not really common to get diagnosed at age 2. Like they push till 3 at the very earliest, and insurance doesn't kick in and cover any type of behavioral therapy without an autism diagnosis. So I pushed and pushed and pushed, and I found, by the grace of God, an incredible developmental pediatrician. And we got in a month before his 2nd birthday. And at that time, he still had no words, wasn't mimicking sounds. We were using PECs, our version of PECs. Went in for a 1-day eval. It was about 3 hours. And, you have every therapist there. And they all leave you for a half hour to consult. They come back and they basically just gave us a diagnosis. And it was kind of like our ticket to say, you can now start the therapies you need. So lucky. She was so wonderful. We did not talk at all about communication at that visit. That was specifically like, here's a diagnosis, get him into the therapies you want. We knew we wanted to do ABA, behavioral therapy. Not everybody's on board with that, but that was our goal. So the very next day, our company that we were working with for OT, PT, and speech had an ABA company come to the clinic and meet Mac. They were a really small company, it was 2 people. They hired 2 therapists, and I knew nothing really about it at the time, and they seemed wonderful, and they ran insurance, and we started with them probably 2 or 3 weeks later. And we started immediately at 40 hours a week in-home therapy, really strict, still having his OT, his PT, and his speech. At this point now, our speech therapist was at home with us 3 days a week. She came for in-home sessions. I think actually Kate has a video of her.
I was just going to say, I have some sessions, I have some videos that would be perfect. And I think it's around the age you're talking about.
Yeah.
Let me get this one up here. Okay.
Guys, bite your lip. Yeah.
So yeah, he had a really hard time mimicking sounds, making the sounds, matching what his brain was thinking to what he was verbally saying. So we started this ABA. In hindsight, I wish I could talk to every parent who's starting ABA and what to look for and what not to. Everything was very strict. We couldn't tell Mac, like, say this, Mac, say but, or anything. Like, it all was very planned out, how it was going to be said to him, how it was going to be taught. And that was hard. And like his sister wasn't allowed to say like, Mac, say hi, and even though he couldn't say it, we would always tell him to talk, and it was just very structured and not family involved. He was doing great at receptive language. It was incredible. Like he can match any puzzle piece to letter or numbers. Like his receptive language was incredible. And after a year with them, I decided, I was like, this is just not right. I don't feel comfortable that I can't direct how I want him to communicate. Right before we left them, he had his first sound repeat, where he was able to repeat a sound. So this was right at the age of 3. And it was literally like the week they were leaving us. I don't know if you have that video, Kate, but I think it was like, say, ack for Mac. And he did it. And it was.
Let me find it. Keep talking and I'll find it.
It was incredible. It was incredible, but that took 1 year of 40 hours of therapy, 3 1-hour sessions with the speech therapist. And it was simply just putting like mimicking sounds. There were still plenty of letter sounds he could not make, but they had been working on that sound pretty much for a year. And from that point on, so then we moved to a different ABA clinic. We stayed with our speech therapist. And from that point on, his verbal communication opened like incredibly. For the first year after he started getting letter sounds, he started getting like 1-word demands, but they were always motivational words like sucker, candy, park, anything that was motivating to him. So for a long time, I mean, I don't think Kate has this video, but he said French fry, or he said fry in the back of the car one day. And I was like, okay. And we like swerved off the road and went to McDonald's and got fries. And it was like, I kept showing him like, you said fries, you get them. So a lot of it was like, whatever you ask for, you're going to get. Obviously, we had to work really hard on breaking that habit, but he saw the benefits of him communicating. After about like a year and a half, we had a follow-up with the developmental pediatrician, and that is when she brought up the AAC device. So Kate, I'll let you show this video because this is kind of right before we went the AAC route.
Okay.
You ready? What's your name?
Yeah.
Good job.
And how old was he there?
Probably about 3.
Okay.
Yeah, right. That was like right before we left that ABA clinic. So we went for a follow-up. That's just kind of typical. You go for your follow-up. And, you know, she asked about his progress. We did all these assessments. She did all these assessments. And she came back and she had mentioned, nobody had ever mentioned a communication device for Mac. You know, at this point, I was like, he's saying letter sounds. He's going to be verbal, still used PECs here and there, like when we needed it. But he was really good at communicating how whatever it was he needed, we could figure it out. It was either taking us somewhere, bringing us to it, bringing something to us, putting letter sounds together, getting out his PECs pictures. He got what he wanted 95% of the time. Was it generalizing like in other settings? No, it only worked with me, my husband, my sister, you know, my family who was around him. Put him with a stranger and they would have had no idea. So, but I was like in this world of like, he's going to be verbal. Like, we're good. He's going to be okay. I'll be verbal. And at that meeting, the developmental pediatrician recommended an AAC device and to go through, I'm blanking out, but it's through the speech place in Chicago. Anyways, to go get evaluated for an AAC device. And I was like, okay, thanks. Like, bye. And, you know, I was like, absolutely not. He'll never speak. Like, we are on the verge of him verbally communicating. And so I spoke with his speech therapist after that. And she kind of was like, I don't think it's a terrible idea. And I was so closed off to it. I also didn't have experience with it. Like in my mind, what it was an old school tablet that spoke like a robot. And I was like, he'll never talk. And I talked with all of his therapists and they all were like so encouraging and like, you will see him speak verbally more than you ever have if you give him this opportunity. And I just didn't believe it. I think I kind of got worn in from our speech therapist and I was like, fine, I will go for the eval. I'll go for the eval. Like, what's the harm in that? It took probably a good 6 months to get me there. And I was not in denial ever of Mac's autism. Like, I was the advocate of like, let's get this rolling. So I don't know what it was that made me so scared of it. So we went to the eval and by the end of the 1 hour session, he was using the device requesting toys that were in the room with "I want" and then a toy within 1 hour. And it's because his receptive language is so strong, he just picked up on it so quickly. And I was just like, jaw dropped, like, holy cow. The device that they were using, I was like, it looks kind of old school. I thought it was incredibly overwhelming. Mac had it figured out within minutes. So we had another follow-up a couple weeks later to decide what device, because there's lots of options, would be best for him. In the meantime, my speech therapist kind of just downloaded a few apps and played around with it to see what maybe would be good for Mac, and told me about an app on the iPhone that you can just put on an iPad. So it's really up to date and it's very easy. And I was kind of like, that sounds good. That's easy. Like, I just take pictures of things around my house and it's easy. It sounded easy. So we went for the eval, and they shared the device that they thought would be best. And I can't remember what it was. And it looked like an iPad. It was really similar. And I was like, great, this sounds great. So they ran it through insurance, and it was like $8,000. We have incredible insurance. Like, when I say incredible, like, we pay almost nothing out of pocket for therapy. That's $175 an hour. So I can't imagine people who don't have insurance, what this would have costed. So I spoke with his speech therapist, and she was like, no, absolutely not. We are going to get this app and we're going to download it in an iPad, and this will be it. You'll be amazed. And I was like, okay. And Kate actually has a video of the first time of her. This is the very first time she used it with him at our house.
Stop. Stop. Turn.
Your turn. Mac's turn. Good job, bud.
Turn.
Drink. Drink. You can have a drink.
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 Turn.
My turn. Thank you.
Turn.
Turn. Your turn.
Oh.
Yeah.
So as you can see, he picked on it immediately. Again, it was used in the beginning for motivators. You know, he used it to get what he wanted and then slowly faded it out. And it was just in the beginning, a lot of modeling for him. You know, like, I would just model, like, if we were going out to the swing, I would just like touch the picture of the swing. And within months, he was using it nonstop. We took it like to Target. We took it everywhere. We took pictures of like realistic things, and we knew eventually we'd kind of fade it into more generalized pictures. We took pictures of all the people that he ever encounters, put the names to them. I mean, it was an ordeal. We took a lot of pictures and made it very personalized for him. And he did awesome. He did great. And he then, like, as he was doing great with the device and using it, he was also verbally getting so much stronger and saying full words and not just sounds. And I was like mind blown. I'm like, so this is just helping, you know, it's not stopping him. It's not doing anything else. It was helping him. So all of his therapists across the board kind of met together, and they all worked on using it as like a benefit for him. So this is a video of him working with OT and speech with his device.
Are we going ready? Ready, set, swing.
So as you can hear in that, I mean, he verbally said swing too. So So that's where we kind of were with the device. Then he continued working on letter sounds verbally, along with modeling on the device, using the device. It was just a little bit of everything. PEX was still in there when needed. And then slowly over time, we just kind of stopped bringing the AAC device everywhere because he pretty much could tell us one word demands to anything. So whatever it really was that he wanted, he could verbally say it. So I found it easier just as a mom, like in our everyday life, to not have it with us everywhere we go. I also he didn't need it when he was with me. But he continued working on like creating sentences and so many crazy things. And, you know, within a few months was typing out like, I want to eat a sucker. And then the craziest thing is we learned his spelling is incredible and he still struggles really, really hard with writing. So I don't think we would have ever seen this. His spelling is incredible. So he uses his device to type out like quotes from movies like that he likes to watch. And so this is him typing out like the names of all the superheroes.
Who do you weigh?
Green.
Green what? Green Lantern?
Yes.
Okay. G-R. E. N.
And
Space. Lantern.
oh,
A.
yeah.
N.
Mm,
T. E. Oh, try again. E.
E. Run,
R.
run, run.
Yeah. L. A. N. Good job.
Run.
T. E.
So yeah, so you can see he's verbally saying everything too. He just likes to hear it. Uh-oh. Oh, sorry, I froze. So then we kind of got him into the school setting and he started in a self-contained preschool class, just 2 days a week. And they kind of looked at me like, what do you mean you have your own device? Like you're bringing your own device into the school. And I was like, yep, we're not going to change. Like he's spent the last year working with this device and they were really caught off guard and was like, I don't really know if we do that. And I was like, well, that sounds silly to introduce a new device with a new program. So they like brought in some specialists and they all agreed. I had to sign a million contracts and waivers and everything. And the speech therapist had to be trained in LAMP, which is the program that he uses. And they would just use it with him. And he used it much more at school than he did at home. He's now in first grade, so he's had 3 years of school. I would say he uses it much less in school. He's generalized his verbal communication much more in classroom settings. But in the beginning, teachers relied on the device to understand him. They still use it way more than we do, which is totally fine. They're constantly modeling on it with him. Or if he's saying like, I want candy, you know, they might type out like, candy is yummy, you know, just to change it up because he's very robotic. When he learns something, how to say it, that is how he says it. So if it's, can I have pretzels? Everything is, can I have? So they use the device to model different ways of talking, different ways of verbalizing it. Not saying the way he's saying is wrong, but just showing him all the different ways to do it. Currently, he's working on identifying emotions and using pictures to say who's mad, who's sad, and then sometimes using the device if he's frustrated and nobody speaks and we just give him a device. And if there's nobody talking to him, sometimes that helps. And he can type out what he's mad about or what it is he needs. And sometimes giving him the device makes him really mad because he can verbally say like, I want cookies. And, and he'll say over and over. So giving him the device, he's like, no, thank you. I've already told you what I wanted. So it's like a happy medium of always trying to figure out what is it that he wants to use to communicate. So our goal is to give him as many options as needed. There's always social stories available to him. Our therapists are so good about those for him. There's always visual schedules for everything, but we don't follow them to a T. They're there for the days that he needs them. Like if I can't figure out what's going on, I can just pull it out for him. There's pictures of his favorite stuff. Then he has his device, he has his verbal communication. So we just give him kind of like every opportunity to communicate to us as possible. I think the greatest part is because I have a history in teaching and a background in teaching, I know how important it is to collaborate with teachers and therapists. And this is not something I did as a teacher. I wasn't a mom. I wasn't a parent. I didn't understand the importance of that. And the collaboration between Mac's therapist and his teachers is so incredible. And the communication that they have and what they notice and what they see. And then somebody makes a social story and they share it and then they do it in both school and at therapy, or they figured out why Mac keeps saying something or whatever. And that collaboration between them is so key. And that would be the first thing I would change for sure as a teacher, is making sure that I am in communication with any therapist that that child is seeing. And also like understanding what are the parents' wants. Like my want isn't for him to always rely on a device. So in his IEP meeting, pushed that one of his goals is verbalizing whatever it was. I think it was like uses 10 verbal commands throughout the day or something like that. And they wanted to do it on a device. And I said, no, he's capable of doing it verbally. Like we can have a device goal, but also I want him to have a verbal goal. And for teachers to hear me and what my wants are for my son, and them implementing that is so important. And so that's kind of where we're at right now with him, is he's bossing us around all day, every day, in every type of communication possible.
I mean, that's amazing. That's a success. So I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions, if that's okay. If you have a question, feel free to type it out in the chat or come off mute, whatever will work better for you. But I will start because I have two questions kind of having to do with communication. As a parent of an autistic child, part one is, do you identify as Mac having autism or Mac being an autistic child?
Okay.
First identity, first language.
Either way is fine with me. I don't have a strong preference. I mean, I don't think it defines Mac, but that is part of Mac and it will always be part of Mac. So it doesn't, to me personally, offend me or I have a preference for it. I think it's okay if he's labeled as autistic or labeled as having autism, because he does, and that's a part of him. And that's also what makes him beautiful. So I don't think of it as a negative label, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And who knows how Mac will identify when he's older,
Yeah.
when he is old
Yeah.
enough to identify, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a part two to it. Since Mac is limited verbal because his verbalations have increased so much.
Yeah.
Do you feel strongly about him being nonverbal or a non-speaker? Do you say limited verbal? How do you kind of capture Mac's communication?
I say emerging speaker.
Oh.
That's kind of where, I mean, I I think of like when you talk about like a 3 or a 4-year-old talking or a 2 or a 3-year-old, they're an emergent speaker. And that's kind of where Mac is. I truly never thought he would be verbal at all. And now that he speaks in full sentences, I'm like, who am I to put a limit on it? So I think as of right now, like I would call him an emerging speaker.
Love that. That's a great term. Okay, that's it for my questions. Now I'll be quiet. Any other questions for Colleen?
Who is Mac's favorite superhero?
Oh gosh, I think probably Batman.
Batman?
Yeah, superheroes those are new. We have been stuck on trolls for about 3 years. So yeah, so superheroes are newer.
Okay, gotcha. Well, Batman's a classic, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one.
Yeah.
That was a great question.
Well,
Aaron.
speaking of, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Wesley.
This is not even, speaking of Batman, I just.
Oh, Mac would love it. He would love it.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the Lego set? Is that like a 1,000-piece Lego? Okay.
I have a Lego obsession.
I will pay you to come to my house and build all of the
Legos
Legos that have
with your
fallen
son.
apart and are just in pieces. Because my kids are driving
Sure, I'll do it for free.
nuts. Okay.
That's so funny. Mike's always been obsessed with figurines, like little figurines. So we have, no joke, thousands of them. And that is, once we kind of got away from using food as his motivator, those became his motivators. So I buy them probably like once a month to replenish at the school for the therapies, for everything. We have them everywhere. And I have bought probably 50 boxes of trolls, like figurines. They're everywhere in our house. It's insane.
Maybe they'll be worth something someday.
I don't know, but maybe. We'll be really rich if they are.
Erin, I'm so sorry I missed this in the chat. Erin's room is self-contained.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, and then can you come off mute and just give us a little bit more about that? Since it's not a gen ed setting.
Right. So right now I'm a parent in there, but what it is it's an autism-based program within my district.
Okay.
And so we do push out for gen ed, like morning meeting. It's kindergarten. And we're a full day with our kids. I don't know if that's all throughout the state now or if it's still sporadic, if kindergarten's all day or half day.
I think it's still sporadic.
Depends on the district, yeah.
Okay. Because I know when my aunt started teaching gen ed kindergarten years ago, she started doing half days.
Yeah.
But now we're full day in my district. And so a lot of our kids, they don't necessarily have to have an autism diagnosis to be in our classroom, but a lot of our students who either have an autism diagnosis or will benefit. So we do get some students who are behavior disorders that are still too young to go to like a learning lab in our district. So
Got it. So our school system is set up, it's called the FBI program, and it's set up in a 3-to-1 ratio setting as one classroom. So 3 students to every 1 adult, and a 2-to-1. This is kind of like a little side note. Mac is in the 3-to-1 program, which is actually at our home school, but we ended up taking our school to mediation because they wanted to put him in a 2-to-1. So thank God I had a teaching background. I knew it was too restrictive for him. All of his therapists agreed. We went through multiple meetings, an IEP meeting. We ended up hiring an advocate, which is such a bummer. She was wonderful, but such a bummer that we had to fight so hard against the school. So Mac went through a 14-week trial for his first year in kindergarten, where they followed him around with a clipboard and took data at every minute of every single day. And after 14 weeks, we had another meeting and all the data showed that the least restrictive was a 3-to-1. And basically the school administration, I should say the district admin, had basically wrote us an apology letter saying like, I'm so sorry that we put you through this. And school doesn't pay for an advocate, parents do. It's the taxes that pay for the school side of an advocate. So we paid thousands of dollars out of pocket for advocate. But thank God I had her. And I have sat in, I don't know, probably 50 IEP meetings, beyond just, as a teacher, and I would have never been able to make my way through that. So as a teacher, like, be an advocate for the student, trust what the parent is saying. Again, that came from collaboration of therapists who had been working with him for 4 years and knew him. And yeah, it was heartbreaking. And so Max stays with the same teacher for 3 years. And during that 14-week trial, all she sent home was negative comments, was just negative after negative after negative. On the very first day of school, first day I dropped him off, I got a call 2 hours in that he had butted the teacher, and the teacher was in the nurse's office. I'm like, he is not aggressive. This can't be right. Come to find out that he was standing up, she was bending over, but they immediately turned it into he aggressively hurt her. Like, they were just out to prove us wrong. And his teacher asked to have lunch this summer and basically apologized and was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I was pushed to show that Mac didn't belong in this classroom. And I was trying to keep a job and also know what was right. And it just opened up a lot of, I don't know, it just made me realize what can happen in a school system to somebody who's very knowledgeable and very educated. So for parents who aren't and don't have that knowledge, don't have that background, my heart breaks for them. And this is just kind of a side note, but this past summer, I knew, like, when Mac was diagnosed, that at some point I wanted to become an advocate in some way or somehow, but I had to find the space, like, in my heart to do it. And I was so deep in autism with Mac for 4 years. And this past summer, I felt kind of like this relief. I found a happy place with his teacher. He was in the right setting for school. We got a new special ed admin that wrote me I could cry, the most incredible letter about Mac. He's in a wheelchair, and he just was like so understanding and on my side. And it just put me in a place, and I was able to, I'm now on the board for Autism Speaks and chairing their main gala, and I'm helping in the community outreach areas of Autism Reach, or of Autism Speaks. And it's just like, I'm like honored. I'm honored to be able to do it. And I spend so much time doing it, and it like truly fills my heart, because 5 years ago, this is where I wanted to be. I just didn't know if I'd get there. And now I'm like, my goal is to make sure that there aren't parents who are put through what I was put through, because it's not fair, nor do I'm just so happy to be in a place where I'm like not drowning anymore.
I completely get where you're coming from. My family went through a similar situation. I have a sister who's about 18 years older than me. She was born with cerebral palsy as a birth injury. And when she was in, I think, high school, that's when they were really starting to get inclusion going.
Mm-hmm.
They had put her in a biology class. And all she would do is talk. But she was more social than she was academic.
Yeah.
And my mom had gone to one of her IEP meetings, and she's like, you need to take her out. That's not fair. You're putting her in a class where she's not going to learn anything. And not only is she's not learning anything, she's disrupting kids who need this class to pass. Why can't you put her into something like cooking that's more social, that she can do something in?
Yeah.
And I think it was the head of the special ed department, or it was somebody who was within that scope, told my mom something along the lines of, well, you can't expect a miracle. And my mom only wanted her in there because she didn't want to disrupt the other kids who needed that class. Yeah. She wanted her in there because she could dry dishes. Yeah. Dry dishes at that point, and she was more social. So I completely, luckily we didn't have to go anything to that extent, And it was way before I was even a thought, but I understand like that whole advocate piece.
Still
is
happens. That's
so
so
big.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if I could like leave you with like a piece of advice as becoming a teacher or being a teacher, be the teacher that a mom or dad of a special needs child will always remember. Like I will always remember this special ed admin. I met him 3 times this year. And the first IEP meeting of the year, he was new. I had never met him. I went in guard up, like after last year, after, you know, everything that happened. And he just looked at me and was like, Mac is amazing. And everything he said was so uplifting and positive, and what Mac does so well, and all the things like he can see Mac doing. And it was like, based off of what he knows Mac's good at, like I could see him doing this and this and this. And it's just, I've shared his letter with so many people. I've sent it to district admin and just said, like, you are so lucky that you have someone like this to work with and who works for you, because truly that has made all the difference. And so be that person, be the person that a parent remembers you fought for their child. Be on their team. That's really all that it comes down to.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a big
And
part.
we have had, I mean, I think the aides in Mac's classroom have been the greatest asset to his education. They don't have a teaching certificate. They don't have, you know, they're just getting paid minimum wage, and they're there because they just love Mac. And be that kind of person. Do it because you love your kids. It is so different as a mom now and seeing it from this angle than when I was teaching as not a mom, and the purpose of why I taught then compared to now.
Oh my gosh, so many good words of wisdom. This was incredible, Colleen. Thank you so much. Also really fitting because we're going into our last week before spring break. So I feel like I needed this, like motivational Monday.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom about Mac and your, you know, all the tips for us as teachers, and be the teacher. I'm going to remember that. Be the teacher that you want the parent to remember. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for coming. We're almost at time. Thank you for participating. Abigail, shout out to you. I think you're having mom life over there. I'm like, oh my gosh, my kids are running around somewhere. But thank you all so much. Thank you so much to Colleen. Shameless plug. I will share your link call to the Autism Speaks Gala that's coming up.
Please,
If
yes.
you all would like to donate, because
Yes.
I'll be there. We'll be there that night. Can't wait.
Yes, please do.
All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, thank you.